Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and start on our mats. I am Deanna, and this is the first Saturday of the month, and that means that it is our Saturday morning yoga practice. We're going to do a gentle sequence today, which means we're going to have movement throughout, unlike some of my yin classes where we hold our postures for several minutes. This one, we're going to be a little bit more fluid, and we're also not going to stand up. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for me in particular, because I'm going to lead you through some movements that typically include standing, but we're going to try to do it not standing up to make sure that we stay a little bit more gentle. I'm going to invite you to lay down on your back as we start out this practice. We're going to spend the next hour right here on our mats, dedicating our time to ourselves. So we're going to spend a few moments here preparing to dedicate this practice to ourselves. And just take some natural breaths in and out, natural as into your own pace, your own body, natural to you, not mimicking my breathing, but just following your own breath as it moves in and out of your body. We're going to settle ourselves here, settle your body as you take each inhalation and exhalation, especially with that exhalation. Feel your body sink more into the ground, into the floor. Allow the floor to hold you instead of your body suspending you above the ground. Allow the ground to hold you, to support you up, to suspend you up. And just release with every exhalation, release a little bit more of that engagement in your body. We can do a body scan, sort of check in with each part of our body to see if it's releasing and relaxing and allowing the floor below us to support us instead of our muscles. So let's think about our toes. And as I name a body part, check in with that body part and see if there's anything more you can do to release the engagement of those muscles. Your toes, your arches, top of your feet, your heels, your ankles, your calves and your shins, your knees. What more can you do to release? Your quads, your hamstrings, your hips. As I'm getting over a cold, I'm going to see if I can release more in my upper body. I've been holding a lot of tension there. So let's think about our belly, our abdomen, our lower back, our middle back, our rib cage area, our lungs, our chest, our shoulders, our upper back, our biceps, some of our triceps, our elbows, our forearms, our palms, our fingers. What more can we release in our neck and our throat? the back of our head, our chin, our tongue, our cheeks. So much is held in our face. It's not enough to just say, release your face. I'm going to challenge you to release each little part. Your left cheek, your right cheek, your temples, your eyes, your forehead, and the top of your head. Connect back in with your breath. Use those exhalations to push out more of that energy that you're holding, the tension that you're holding in your body. And I want to encourage you to reconnect with your breath throughout this practice. And right now, we're going to release our mind using our breath. I said this was a practice for yourself, for ourselves. It's not a practice for your to-do list. It's not a practice for what you're doing this afternoon. It's not a practice for your obligations to other people. This is a practice, your obligation to yourself, to your own well-being. So let's use the next 3 exhalations to release thoughts that might be rattling around in your mind. And feel free to use loud breathing. Push it out. You can even do a lion's breath where you scrunch up your face, breathe in, and roar it out. Let's do one more. Get it all out. Now dedicate your practice to some intention of yours, your reason for being here today, your reason for getting on your mat, the goodness you wanted to give yourself. Take a moment and dedicate your practice to that reason, that intention. And now when you're ready, bring both of your arms overhead past the top of the mat. Bring your feet together. Make yourself as tall as possible. And now walk your hands and feet over to the right side to make a crescent moon shape out of your body. Feel free, if you would like, you can place your left hand inside your right palm and your left ankle on top of your right ankle. And sometimes when we do this, our chest can expand upwards. See if you can knit your rib cage back together so that your chest is closer to the ground. And go ahead and unbind your hands and feet if you bound them and come back to center. Lengthen your body as long as possible and walk over to the left side with your arms and your legs. And feel free to place your right hand inside your left palm and your right ankle on top of your left ankle. Knit those your rib cage back into each other so your chest isn't expanding upward. and come back to center. Bring both knees into your chest. Let's do wrap your arms around your shins and let's do a little massage of your back. Rock from side to side. Now rock both knees over to the right side for a twist. Drop your right knee, both knees onto the floor. Well, your right knee onto the floor and your left knee on top of your right knee. And then bring both arms out to figure a T shape. And I'm going to invite you to send your gaze up towards the sky or over to the left, away from the direction of your knees. Come back to center. Now we'll send our knees over to the left, arms still in a T shape, and your gaze up toward the sky or off to the right. Come back to center. Let's rock your back from side to side, and then roll over onto your side and come into tabletop. And from tabletop, we're gonna do some cat and cows, but first let's get our alignment correct. So our knees are below our hips and our wrists are below our shoulders. And now let's go ahead and start some cat and cows at your own pace. So I'm gonna lift my pelvis, my hips, drop my belly and lift my gaze. And I'm gonna round my back, drop my hips, and drop my head. Lift my hips, drop my belly, lift my gaze, drop my hips, round my back, drop my gaze. We'll just do this several times. Again, at your own pace. And follow your breath. Move your body in one direction as your breath moves in that direction, and then in the other direction as your breath moves in that. And feel free to make some extra movements, maybe send your hips around, make some revolutions with your hips in the other direction. And then when you're ready, bring your body back to tabletop. And from here, send your right foot out behind you. Keep your toes tucked. And we're gonna rock backwards and forwards several times. A little stretch in your calves and in your plantar fascia. You come back to tabletop. Send your left foot out behind you. And let's rock. Same way we did on the other side. And come back to tabletop. Send your right foot out, lift it off the ground. Keep your toes pointed toward the floor. Make sure your hips are even so you're not leaning over to the left side. Send your left arm out beyond you. We'll stay here for several breaths. And come back to tabletop. Let's do the other side. Send that left foot out, off the ground, toes pointing toward the floor. Then your right arm out beyond you. And come back to tabletop. Tuck your toes, walk your hands a little bit forward, and push yourself up to downward facing dog. And pedal your feet out. And lift both heels up so that you're up on your tippy toes. Bend your knees until your chest, your belly touches your thighs. And then keep your back as flat as it is now as you begin to straighten your legs. Now, the most important thing is the flat back, not the straight legs. So you probably will not achieve straight legs, and that's perfectly fine. Use your hands to push your hips further back. Lengthen your back, lengthen your spine. And then come back down to tabletop. Bring your right foot forward in between your hands. And now we're going to rock forward and backwards. So rock forward into a low lunge. Stay here. Feel that stretch in the front of your left leg. And then walk your hands backwards along with your hips. Come into runner's stretch. Bring your front toes off the ground. And then walk forward again for a lunge. And walk yourself back into that runner stretch. And then come back, sort of that neutral pose where your hands are on the floor and your both knees are almost like in a 90-degree position, your legs. And we're gonna actually lean forward, tuck your toes, your back toes, and lift up. Drop your left hand on the floor and send your right arm up toward the ceiling. See if you can keep your hips relatively squared while you do this. So it's not like a full, you're not twisting from your whole back. You're keeping your lower back and your middle back sort of towards the floor. And then you twist sort of in that middle upper back up toward the ceiling. And bring that right hand down. Send your right foot back to downward facing dog. And come back down to tabletop. We'll do the other side. So bring that left foot forward in between your feet. And shift your weight forward into a lunge. And you kind of want you don't want your knee pointing too much forward, so you may need to adjust. I had to adjust right there so that it's more of a 90-degree. And then walk your hands back and your hips to that runner's stretch. and go forward into the lunge. And walk yourself back to runner stretch. And then walk yourself forward, tuck your back toes, lift your knee off the floor, drop your right hand on flat on the floor and lift your left arm up overhead. Just like on the other side, square your hips so that you're twisting not at your lower back, but more toward your middle and upper back. You can send your gaze up toward the ceiling if you want. And then bring your left hand down, send that left foot back to downward facing dog. We'll stay here for a few moments, a few breaths. And now shift your body forward to a plank. And bend your elbows and bring your body slowly toward the floor. Untuck your toes, we'll come up into cobra. And shift your weight back, tuck your toes up to downward facing dog. We'll do that again. Come forward to plank. Down slowly to the floor. Untuck your toes. Up to cobra. And up to tabletop. And now we'll come into child's pose. So from tabletop, bring your big toes together. Walk your hips down to your heels. And then walk your hands forward. Drop your head to the floor. And you can leave your arms engaged out in front of you. You can have them sort of relaxed around you. You can wrap them around your body and hold on to your heels, however you want to stay here in child's pose. We'll stay here for a little bit. Right. And now we're gonna lift ourselves up to tabletop, tuck our toes, come back up into downward facing dog. Lift those heels up, so come up on your tippy toes. Bend those knees until your belly touches your legs. Begin to straighten your knees, keeping your back nice and flat. And now walk your hands and feet towards each other. We're gonna turn our bodies around to the side so that we can open up our legs to a wide leg stance. Just widen your legs. Place both hands on the floor, your palms down. And now walk your hands into so that they are now in between your feet. And drop your head. So it feels like you're about to do a headstand or sort of a inversion of some sort. Now walk your hands forward so that they are in front of your face on the floor. I want you to keep your hips level, facing the floor. Take your left hand and your right hand and put it on your hip. And then begin to twist toward your right side. And once you're sure you can keep your hips square, send that right arm up toward the sky. Again, you're twisting in your middle and upper back, not at your lower back. And come back to center. Now place your left hand on your left hip. Send your gaze towards the left, maybe up toward the sky. And then keep those hips square as you send your left arm up overhead. Back to center. We're going to walk ourselves over to the left. Sort of keep that left leg bent and straighten your right leg. And then walk back to center, and we're going to walk over to the other side. Bend your right leg, and straighten your left one. Come back to center. We'll do that a few more times at your own pace. And now come over to the left side. We're going to turn ourselves towards the front of our mat. Use your hands to turn yourself over. So your front foot is facing forward. Your back foot is kind of at a sort of diagonal. And we're going to sort of come into warrior 3 from this posture. So lift that back leg up off the ground. And you may need to keep your front leg bent. Begin to take your arms off the floor. Oops. And you can keep your arms beside you, behind you, forward. And come back. Place your foot back down on the floor. We're going to come back onto our side. Now we're going to use our hands to switch ourselves over to the other side. So now our other foot is forward, and the back foot is again diagonal. We're going to come into our warrior 3 this way. So back leg off the ground, front leg probably bent. And then lift your hands off the floor. And your arms can be behind you, to the side, or out in front. Come back down. Send both legs back. Come back into downward facing dog. Back into plank. And those elbows bring the body to the floor. Up into cobra. And tuck your toes and come back into plank. And bring your right knee up towards your armpit and bring it down to the floor. We're going to come into pigeon. So your right knee is forward. Your heel is close to your body. Don't send it out sideways because that can tweak your knee. Your back leg straight behind you, toes untucked. Drop your down to your elbows. And you can stay right here. Or you can drop your head to the floor. You can make a little pillow out of your hands. Or you can just drop your head to the floor, wrap your hands around your head, whatever works for you. Keep your hips even. It's easy in this to sort of have a hip pop up or down. So see if you can keep your hips equal distance from the floor. We'll stay here for a little bit, for several breaths. You're gonna walk yourself up, tuck your back toe, come back to downward facing dog. Forward to plank. Chaturanga down. Untuck your toes. Come up to cobra, tuck your toes, and up to plank. And from plank, bring that left knee towards your armpit and drop it down to the floor. Untuck your back toes. Come down to your elbows and find that expression that you can hold for a little bit. Maybe stay on your shoulder, on your elbows, or maybe bring your forehead down to the floor. Again, check in with your hips. Make sure they're equal distance from the floor to the hip on both sides. Lift your torso up with your hands and arms. Tuck your back toe. Send yourself back into downward facing dog. We'll stay here for several breaths. Again, use those hands to push your hips further back. Flatten that back, even if it means your knees are a little bit bent or a lot bent. Come forward to plank. Chaturanga down. Untuck your toes. Up to cobra. Up to plank. Tabletop. Big toes together. Drop your hips down to your heels and walk forward into child's pose. This time, wrap your arms around your body so that your hands are holding onto your heels. And begin to lift your hip up off the floor so it rounds your back as your hands hold onto your heels. And come back down. And do that a couple more times at your own pace. Now walk your hands forward. Come up into tabletop. And from here, we're gonna bring our elbows down to the mat. Drop our head to the floor. And bring your hands to the prayer position behind your neck. So your head is on the floor, your elbows are on the ground. Your fingers are pointing up toward the ceiling. And they're coming, the hands are coming together behind your neck. You should feel this stretch in your triceps. You may need to walk your elbows forward a little bit to get a fuller expression. Keep your core engaged so you protect your lower back. See if you can just sort of release your chest towards the floor. Begin to release that hand palms back to the floor. Push yourself up into tabletop. From here, we're going to walk our fingertips out so they're facing the outside of the mat. And then maybe you want to walk your fingertips further around as far as your hands feel comfortable doing. Perhaps your fingertips are now pointing towards your knees. Just do it until your body tells you to stop. And we'll stay here, give our wrists a little bit of a stretch, maybe rock backwards and forwards. These are like little micro rocks, right? It's not a lot because it doesn't take a whole lot to stretch our wrists. And then as slowly as you got into it, walk your hands back into tabletop. Bring your knees together, tuck both toes, and sit back on your heels. Bring the backs of your hands together and start to shake out those wrists. It's a nice way to distract you from the work that your feet are doing. All right, and now let's come back to tabletop and drop our butt to the floor. Bring both feet forward. So now we're sitting on our mat. We're gonna first bring both of our hands beside us, besides our hips. Maybe your hands are touching, maybe they're just resting above the floor, but drop your shoulders down and back. And maybe it's just your fingertips that are touching the floor. Core engaged. And we'll stay right here. So feet forward, core engaged, shoulders down and back. And hands barely touching the floor. Or maybe they are touching the floor, depends on how your body's made. Bring those arms overhead. And I want you to fold forward with a flat back until you can't anymore, and then round it. Drop your hands to the floor, to your shins. Maybe you want to wrap them around your heels, whatever works for you. We're going to stay here for several breaths. Every time you breathe out, see if you can fold forward a little bit more. I want you to feel the stretch in your hamstrings, which means you might need to bend your knees to get the stretch right here in your hamstring. If the stretch is behind your knees or up by your butt, it means you need to bend your knees because I don't want you to hurt yourself. And with a flat back, come all the way up. Bring those arms down. Send your left leg out to the side a little bit and bring your right leg in close to you. Bring those arms up overhead. Twist your torso so it's facing your extended leg. And again, with a flat back, fold forward until you can't anymore, and then round it. Place one hand on each side of your leg on the floor, and you can use that to sort of twist your torso more so that it's facing your leg. And again, with each exhalation, see if you can extend deeper into this posture. Walk yourself back up. From here, we're going to send our leg around the side and so that it's bent a little bit. And we're gonna see if we can sort of do a little bit of modified warrior two. So we're kind of up on our right hip, arms out, extended beyond us on each side, torso forward. And now send your gaze off to the right. We're going to do a modified triangle. So send your arm all the way out to as far out to the side as you can. And then when you can't anymore, bring it down to the floor. And then send your left arm up overhead. So use your hand on the floor to push your torso up towards the sky. And then come back into our modified warrior two. The arms out to the side, our gaze off to the right. And now we're going to do a recline warrior modified. So place your back hand on your back leg and lift your right hand up towards the sky. Back into warrior two. And now place your hands on the floor and we're going to switch sides. So extend your right leg out and off towards the side. Bring your left leg close in. Arms up overhead. Twist your torso toward your extended leg. And fold forward. Place one hand on each side of your leg and use your hands to twist your torso so it's facing your extended leg more than it was. And use your exhalations to see if you can get deeper into this posture. And walk yourself forward. We're now going to do our modified warrior two. So send your extended leg, wrap it around you, torso facing forward, arms extended. Send your gaze off toward your left side. And then for modified triangle, send that left arm out as far as you can go while still balancing. And then drop it down to the floor and send your right arm up toward the sky. Use your hand on the floor with your shoulder down and back to push your torso up towards the sky. And come back into warrior two with your arms out and your gaze extended past your left fingertips. And we'll come back into recline warrior. So right hand on your back leg, send your left arm up toward the sky. And send your chest upward toward the sky. Back into warrior two. And drop your arms. Bring your feet around and we'll lay on our back again. Do some bridge pose. So I want you to bring your heels together, well, not together, but close to your hip width apart and close to your butt. Perhaps if you extend your fingers lengthwise along your body, your arms lengthwise along your body, your fingertips might be able to touch the backs of your heels, perhaps. And we're gonna take a bridge pose in several steps. So I'm gonna have you take 5 breaths, and by the time you reach your 5th breath, you are all the way up into your full expression of bridge pose. So we're gonna start with our first breath, just slightly off, our hips slightly off the mat, and back down. And with each consecutive breath, bring your hips a little bit more off the ground. And back down, hips back down. And I want you to, as you do this, make sure that you keep your knees pointed toward the ceiling. They're not going to extend outwards. They're just going to stay as if you have flashlights on your knees, there's like towards, like the top of the wall in front of you towards the ceiling. Lift up a little bit more. And back down. A little bit more. Back down. And once you get to your 5th breath, maybe you roll away in your top expression bridge pose. And you can keep your hands on the floor. I like to clasp them behind tuck my shoulders underneath my arms underneath my shoulders, clasp my hands together. Keep the wrists, the palms pressed towards each other if you do that. And then send my hips all the way up toward the ceiling. Begin to release everything and slowly bring your hips back to the ground. Bring those knees together towards your chest. Bring your left foot to the floor and your right ankle on top of your left quad. Lift your left foot so that your left leg comes towards you. Clasp your hands behind your left hamstring and use that right elbow to push your right knee away from your body. Keep your right foot flexed. That helps to stabilize your knee. And so pull your left leg towards you as you push your right knee away from you. And untwist, and we'll do the other side. So left ankle on top of the right leg, above the knee. Clasp your hands around the back of your right hamstring. Pull your right leg toward you as you push your left knee away from you. Keep that left foot flexed the whole time. And untwist, bring those knees to your chest and drop them over to the right like we did at the beginning. Arms in the T shape, face off to the left. Back to center and off to the other side. For both the knees and the face, opposite directions. Come back to center. Bring both knees towards your armpits and wrap your hands around the outside of your feet. And rock from side to side in happy baby. Take turns. Continue holding onto your feet and straighten your right leg. And then bend it, straighten the left leg. And bend it. And then try to straighten both legs. Straighten, approaching straighten. And come back. Take any last movements you need, and then let's all meet in corpse pose for Shavasana. So laying flat on our backs, our feet as wide as the mat, arms just laying beside us, palms up. We'll find our center again. Keep our mind focused on our practice, on our breath. We have just a few more minutes together. Let's maximize them and keep our mind here. On our mat and our practice, connect back in with your intention, the dedication that you made earlier. Express gratitude to yourself for being here, for making it to your mat. Good job, Deanna. Just notice how your body feels different than when we started our practice. And begin to find some movement in your body. Bring your knees into your chest. Wrap your arms around your knees again. Roll over onto your side. Slowly bring yourself up to a seated posture. Place your hands on your knees with your palms facing up to receive all the energy that the world wants to give you. Take the final moment to thank yourself again for prioritizing you this morning and showing up for yourself. Bring your palms to the heart center and allow me to thank you for joining me this morning. Enjoy your day.